she laughed the loudest in the room. Her friends teased her for being the sunshine of the group, the one who always lifted everyone's spirits. Tonight was no different. She told stories, threw her head back with that contagious laughter, and made sure no one felt left out. To the world, she was glowing. But when the night ended and the last goodbye was whispered, she walked home alone, her smile slowly fading with every step. Inside her room, the silence was deafening. She sat on the edge of her bed, her body still aching from holding up that performance of happiness. The laughter that once poured out of her lips felt like a lie echoing back at her. She reached for her pillow, hugging it tightly, and the tears she had been holding in all day finally spilled out. The truth was, she wasn't okay. She hadn't been for a long time. She fought battles no one else could see. Thoughts that whispered she wasn't enough, fears that gripped her chest in the middle of the night, doubts that drowned her whenever she dared to hope. Yet she never spoke of them, afraid of burdening those she loved, afraid of losing the image of being the strong, happy one. And so, her silent war raged on behind closed doors. If someone had looked a little closer that night, they might have seen the tiredness in her eyes or noticed how her laughter didn't quite reach her heart. But the world often sees what it wants to see, and she gave them exactly that. Her story is a reminder that the brightest smiles sometimes cover the deepest wounds, and the kindest thing we can ever give is not assuming, but asking, listening, and reminding someone that they don't have to fight their battles alone. He woke before dawn, just as he always did. The alarm clock buzzed, and he dragged himself out of bed, body heavy though he had slept for hours. The world only saw discipline in him. The man who never missed a day of work, who arrived early, stayed late, and never complained. Colleagues admired his reliability, his steady presence in meetings, his quiet way of getting things done. To them, he seemed unshakable, the kind of man who had everything in order. Yet inside, he carried a weight no one could see. It pressed on his shoulders like an invisible backpack filled with stones, slowing his steps and stealing his breath. Every morning he put on his tie, ironed shirt, and forced a neutral smile into place, because he knew society rewarded strength and punished weakness. When asked, "How are you?" he always replied, "Good," even though the word tasted false in his mouth. Beneath that mask, depression whispered lies into his mind: "You're failing. You don't matter. No one would notice if you stopped showing up." The silence of his struggle was the cruelest part. How could he explain a battle that had no bruises, no scars, nothing to prove it was real? On the train to work, he watched others scrolling on their phones, chatting, laughing, and wondered if anyone else was fighting wars like his. He longed for someone to ask and mean it, to sit with him without judgment, to understand that strength doesn't always look like carrying on alone. But still, he pressed forward, step after heavy step, because quitting wasn't an option he allowed himself. His story teaches us that people may appear steady while carrying storms inside, and sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a gentle word, a listening ear, can be the hand that lightens an unseen load. She sat in front of the mirror, brushing her hair slowly, staring at the reflection that never seemed to match what the world told her she was. Her friends called her beautiful, strangers complimented her smile, but all she could see was flaw after flaw, skin that wasn't clear enough, a body that didn't look like the ones plastered across social media, a face that never seemed to measure up. She had spent hours scrolling through endless images, comparing herself to the filtered perfection of people she didn't even know, letting each picture carve deeper cracks into her sense of worth. On Instagram, she was radiant. Perfectly angled selfies, bright captions, and a trail of heart emojis from people who admired her online presence. She curated her life carefully, making sure no one suspected the storm inside. Every like gave her a brief moment of validation, like drops of water to a thirsty soul. But the feeling always faded quickly, leaving her emptier than before. Alone with her reflection, she whispered questions she would never dare say aloud. Why can't I ever be enough? Why do I feel invisible in a world that sees me all the time? The truth was that she had tied her worth to images, to illusions, to standards that shifted like shadows. She didn't realize yet that what makes someone beautiful cannot be filtered, cannot be liked into existence. It lives in kindness, in authenticity, in the courage to be imperfect. That mirror did not show her resilience, her creativity, her heart that cared deeply for others. It only reflected her surface, never the soul within. Her silent battle was not against the mirror but against the lie that her value was skin deep. Her story reminds us that the truest beauty is never found in comparison, but in embracing the self the mirror cannot capture. The phone sat on the edge of the table, screen glowing faintly in the darkened room. He stared at it, his hands trembling, a storm raging inside that no one else could hear. All day he had carried the heaviness, pretending to function, pretending to smile, but now, alone, the silence felt unbearable. Thoughts pressed down like weights he couldn't push off. He whispered to himself that no one would notice if he disappeared, that maybe it would even be easier for everyone else. His chest tightened as the idea took root, and he felt himself sinking deeper into that dangerous quiet where hope flickered like a dying flame. Just as the despair grew loudest, the phone vibrated. A simple ringtone, a name flashing across the screen, his friend calling. He almost didn't answer. His voice would betray him, his emotions too raw to hide. But something inside, some fragile thread, urged him to pick up. "Hey," his friend's voice came through, casual but warm, like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud. "I don't know why, but I just felt like I should check in. How are you doing?" Those words cracked the dam. He wanted to say, "I'm fine," but the lie felt impossible this time. Instead, silence filled the line, and his friend didn't rush him. Didn't push. Just waited. And in that waiting, something shifted. He realized he wasn't as invisible as he believed. Tears slipped down his face as he whispered the truth he had hidden for so long, "I'm not okay." That call didn't erase the battle, but it reminded him he wasn't fighting it alone. Sometimes, a simple hello, a moment of presence, is the rope that pulls someone back from the edge. His story reminds us, never underestimate the power of reaching out. You might just save a life. The morning light crept through the curtains as she quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her children. Her body ached with exhaustion, not from lack of sleep alone but from the invisible war she carried inside. Some days, getting up felt like climbing a mountain with no summit, yet she still found herself in the kitchen, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, and pressing soft kisses onto small foreheads. To her children, she was steady, reliable, the one who always showed up. They never saw the nights she lay awake, fighting the thoughts that told her she wasn't enough, or the mornings when she wanted nothing more than to curl up and disappear. She didn't wear armor, but she fought battles every day. Anxiety that lurked in the corners of her mind, waves of sadness that threatened to pull her under, the relentless pressure to hold everything together for everyone else. And yet, she rose. She smiled. She gave. To the outside world, it might have looked ordinary, but in truth, it was extraordinary. Strength doesn't always roar, it often whispers in the quiet choices to keep going, to keep loving, to keep showing up even when it hurts. As she tucked a note into her daughter's lunchbox that read, "You are loved," she didn't realize she was writing the same reminder her own soul needed. She didn't see herself as heroic. She only saw the struggle. But heroes don't always fly or wear capes. Sometimes, they are mothers, fathers, friends, and neighbors who keep walking through storms no one else sees. Her story is a reminder that resilience is not the absence of pain but the courage to rise again and again. And perhaps the bravest people of all are the quiet warriors who fight unseen battles every day, choosing love over despair, hope over silence.